Business Spotlight. I'm Helen Gibson, your host, and you're watching Verde Valley TV. Have you ever thought about writing a book? I know I have. I've written 5 feature film screenplays, but I do have some books that are rambling around in my head that I want to get down on paper. Well, we have best-selling writer and gifted storyteller Tim McKeever is here, going to talk about his Monk series, the process of a writer, how do you market your book, where do you publish it, all these elements Tim's going to be talking about on Arizona Business Spotlight. So get your pen and paper ready. Right now we'll take a quick break. We want to thank our sponsor, Orkin, pest control down to a science. See you in a bit.
Orkin has pest control down to a science.
When your business chooses Orkin's Precision Protection Program, you get a tailored pest control program for your specific industry and environment.
Your business can benefit from over a century of experience, training, and scientific knowledge that define the Orkin man.
Maximum protection, minimum exposure, backed by one of the industry's most comprehensive guarantees.
Choose your locally owned and operated Northern Arizona Orkin and get more than an exterminator. Get an expert.
Back on Arizona Business Spotlight. I'm so glad you joined us. This book has to become a movie. I'll tell you what, I think I threw it 3 or 4 times when I was reading it because it was so suspenseful and intense, and the ending, oh my goodness. Well, we're going to learn a little bit about the Gumdrop House affair because joining us right now in studio is the writer, author, storyteller, Tim McKeever. Tim, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Helen. I'm glad to be here.
So it's a good thing when I throw a book. That means that means you got my attention.
That's good.
I'm like reading the story and I'm like, where do these characters come from? The veracity, the truthfulness. Each character had its own voice, you know. This is a well thought out story, but I believe one of the keys to a great writer is that they've experienced some of what they wrote. And in your case, looking at your resume, that you've been in the criminal justice system, tell us a little bit about that background, how that helped you with writing this book and the series.
Well, people always write about what they know. And I started in law enforcement in 1966 in the military and spent a year in Vietnam during the Tet Offensive. And when I came out as a military policeman, I went on to Lansing Police Department in Lansing, Michigan. And from there moved to Colorado, Lakewood Department of Public Safety. Then I was with the District Attorney's Office, 2 different ones for a while. Then when I came here to Arizona, I got backdoored into doing defense investigations. And so did investigations for the Superior Court. And then when Yavapai County finally got a public defender's office, they got tired of paying my outrageous bills because I billed them like a lawyer. So they said, well, we'll give you an office and some medical stuff, and why don't you just work for us? And so I was with them from 2004 to 2010, and then I retired in 2010.
But that writer was always inside there, wanting to express himself.
And it took me a while to find it. And it came out of frustration. I wanted to know, what can I do? Because I'm not a fix-it, I can't build things.
You look like a fix-it.
No. I mean, I used to teach pursuit driving in the police academy, but I can't fix a car or anything. And I came up with, well, I could write maybe.
Oh, yes, you can.
And so I tell everybody I'm a 15-year overnight success because I started kicking it around, and then William Yates Butler was born and just kind of moved from there.
So you're being very humble because you're number 12 best-selling author on Kindle right now, 12th week in a row, correct?
Yes, correct. 3 months.
Best-selling writer. And, you know, we talked earlier about some of the folks that are watching right now that they have a book in them, whether it's a how-to My husband, Tim Barrett, just wrote his book, All Outdoors with Tim Barrett, a lifetime journey of fishing and outdoor experience, and published it with Amazon's Create Space.
There you go.
And so you were talking about that process of once you decide you are a writer, you have something to say, which I believe everybody has a book in them. Tell us a little bit about what that process looks like, for example, with what you used for the Gumdrop House Affair with Create Space.
Well, you start to write it, which initially you think is the hardest thing because you're going, who am I to be writing a book?
You got to get over that.
Writers are Ernest Hemingway and Joseph Wambaugh and C.S. Lewis, and I'm not even that close. But then you start. And if you're serious about it, you'll start learning how to get better. Well, there's a process to this, and you go back to your high school days when you did term papers and things like that, and you start from there. Most people, their first book is kind of cathartic. There's something. Somebody asked me, well, why do you write? And I said, it's because I can't yell loud enough for the rest of the world to hear me. So I write. And most people, like I say, write about what they know or what they felt. The publishing industry has changed so much with being able to self-publish that it gives an author a whole different playing field. But like everything else, there are rules and there are procedures, and you've got to go somewhere and get some honest answers as to how to traverse this minefield.
I'm a big supporter and proponent of Create Space because the people that you work with, when you call them or emailing them questions, they're very helpful. And pretty much they teach you how to format your book, and then you can either sell it on Kindle, like you're best-selling on the Kindle. Platform, or they'll print on demand. Right. Which in the old days you would write a book and you'd have maybe 1,000 copies sitting around, and then you had to go out and go to book signings and do whatever to get your books.
You had to have an agent.
Yes.
You had to have a publishing company, and the people that ran those, say up until 15, 20 years ago, were either editors or authors themselves. Well, the whole landscape has changed.
Think of how many people just gave up on writing because they've got that rejection letter. This takes that whole element out of it. Done is better than perfect, I say, and it's called market share. You have somebody out there that wants to read your book. For example, the Gumdrop House Affair and the Monk series. We're talking, if you're into detective novels, mystery, intrigue, supernatural. I did not see the last chapter coming.
That's good. I'm glad, because you weren't supposed to.
It was a shock. It was exciting. I can tell you this is what we call a page-turner book. So
good.
When people want to write, this is fiction.
Correct.
But there's a lot of truthfulness in it, and veracity is important in writing, doing your research.
I spent a lot of time, if I wanted to put it in a literary shtick, most of my adult life walking through the gutters of humanity. Most police officers that have been in it for any length of time get a little cynical, and you shake your head at what one human being will do to another human being, all the way from children and forward.
We see this in the news every day.
And you cannot get immune to it. When you do, even if you're very cynical, because I think humanity's highly overrated on any given subject. It's still there. You still have to maintain a feeling of compassion. And sometimes it's nothing more than shaking your head and going, I just do not understand why somebody would do something like that.
And we've talked before, and you mentioned a classic example is the well-to-do accountant that comes home and then takes out his whole family. This is humanity at its worst. And why does that happen? And that element runs through the Gumdrop House affair, giving an explanation of the ugly, which is something that is mentioned by one of your characters, Monk.
Oh, absolutely.
And the ugly is a personification of, can I say it?
Sure, go
ahead. The devil. So it's got these supernatural elements in it. It is a dynamite book. We're going to leave you hanging there for just a moment. We'll be back with Tim McKeever, best-selling author, motivational speaker. I'm motivated to write some more. We'll be back and ask him more about the Gumdrop House affair in just a moment on Arizona Business Spotlight.
The Q102.9 plays all the hits.
Yo, what's going on? This is Drizzy Drake.
Ariana Grande.
Maroon 5.
This is Rihanna.
I'm Shawn Mendes.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
Ed Sheeran.
What's up, guys? It's Justin Bieber.
You're listening to The Weeknd.
Start your day with Brian James in the morning. You'll get at least 10 songs in a row during your ride home with Julie Page.
Zach Sang Show.
Catch the Zach Sang Show weeknights 7 to midnight. And Kelly Fox weekends on your home for hit music. The Q102.9 and 104.9 in Prescott and Cottonwood.
Did you know dragging chains can spark a wildfire?
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Back on Arizona Business Spotlight, I'm Helen Gibson. You're watching Verde Valley TV. Welcome. We're talking with Tim McKeever. We left you at the break with a cliffhanger that the ugly in his Gumdrop House affair book is actually the devil. So there's some supernatural elements to this book. Tim, what was one of the hardest parts about writing characters that have been around for eons? like the ugly.
Yeah, well, because he's alive and well, and he's still very deceptive, but very active. And for a lot of people, even Christians, when you say the word, the devil, they cringe. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to believe in it. It's like that needs to go somewhere else. Where in actuality, he's in so many different forms that he's always there, and you need to learn how to spot him. Sometimes it's pretty obvious, but with the monk, he doesn't have so much a sixth sense like all good cops do, because he was a cop before he was the monk, but more of a spiritual gift.
Yes.
And that creepy. I had a friend one time call it his Holy Ghost alarm. It's like, it's not that anything's wrong, just something's not right. And the monk is very attuned to this.
Yes, and so he was a former partner with Lasky, who's one of your characters.
Jack Lasky, yeah.
I love Jack Lasky. I could totally cast this. I say Matt Damon, maybe.
It could be,
But the monk, in talking with you even today, I can see glimpses of both those characters in your conversation. You have the compassion and the strength. We should also mention that you won awards in powerlifting.
World record holding powerlifter and
Wrecking Crew.
The Wrecking Crew, and we set 220 world records in the space of 4 years, and men, women, one of the most successful teams around. And then some of the ladies fell in love and they got married, and other guys, they had better jobs at twice the pay and left the area. But yeah, so there's elements of you, though, in Monk, because when you walk into a room, you're a presence. And so when I'm reading the book, The Gumdrop House Affair, the Monk series, every time Monk walks into the scene, he just commands your attention when you're reading it. And you do the same thing. So I feel like a little bit of you may be in the Monk. Could be. A psychologist would probably say, I'm like the yin and yang symbol. The white part with the black spot, that's Lasky. The black part with the white spot, That's the monk, and they're together, and they balance. There's always a give and take, good and evil, left and right. For every action, there's an immediate opposite reaction.
Right.
So,
well, what I think is interesting, any good story, and anybody writing a book right now, you know, Joseph Campbell's work is a great place to start. Robert McKee, he wrote a book called Story, if you want to learn about story structure and the hero's journey. That's really what we're talking about. The Monk series. This is the Gumdrop House Affair is the second book in this series, and you're working on the third right now.
There's
so we should
5.
So we can get this though at Amazon.com, correct?
Correct.
And a Kindle edition.
Kindle and paperback.
Some people like they're tactile. They want to touch it and feel it, so you can order your own book.
Yeah, or you could have one of each. That would be even better.
Yes.
And so you can have your smartphone when you get stuck in the airport, and you can read the book, and then when you're home, you can have the copy.
And great endorsements I was reading on the back of the book. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? You got to brag on yourself a little bit.
We'll start with the cover. The cover was done by a gentleman named John Stanisi. And if you're into graphic novels, John Stanisi has been drawing Spider-Man and Superman and Batman for DC and Marvel for about 25 years.
Got to hold up your copy, because there you go.
Oh, there we go. And
look
so,
at that.
And very, very anxiously, you know, he got a signature where we could see it. And as you read the book, there are 7 orbs.
I'm going to put it right here.
That are.
I'm leaning against your coffee.
Okay,
there we go.
Coffee. And
the monk.
Those are on the outside of the Gumdrop House. There's 7 gumdrops outside. But John, we've been friends for a while, and through our mutual friend Dan Gordon. And I called him because he had given me some ideas. We didn't realize that both of us were thinking of the same person. When I write, I've got to see, touch, feel. And so I had a person in mind. Unbeknownst to me, when I asked John to do the cover, he ended up with that same person in mind. And we didn't know until maybe a couple months ago that we were thinking about the same person. So John he captures everything about the monk. You can look at the cover and you go, this guy is serious, but there's a power there, and he's focused on something.
Yes.
And now
you got to read the book to find out what that is.
That's it. Find out what it is. And then the endorsement from Dan Gordon. Dan Gordon,
that's huge.
Long-time screenwriter. Wrote he wrote the screenplay for Denzel Washington's
Hurricane.
The Hurricane, which I think is the best thing that Denzel ever did. Passenger 57, he's done plays. He's looking at, if things go right, he's going to have 4 things in production by the end of the month.
I can see your Gumdrop House Affair and the Monk series being that next big, huge Hollywood film chain, detective. You know, I'm trying to think of who should buy this book. Everyone needs to get this book, and it's a great Christmas present for people that love film noir and detective stories. And you know, I think of Harrison Ford. You know, and that book, that series. You know, he did a lot of the Clancy novels.
Yeah, the Tom Clancy thing.
Tom Clancy. So that's kind of, you know, I was casting it as I was reading it, but you've done an amazing job.
The monk is going to be special, and other than myself, nobody knows these characters better than Dan Gordon. But the monk is just, you know, he's 6'5", 315 pounds, martial artist, powerlifter, who had an epiphany from being a cop, and he saw it as he and Lasky, and they were just the nastiest people and the best team on the Denver Police Department. They were fighting the symptoms of our culture and humanity. He got a calling, because he was very devout Catholic, and so were his parents, to go fight the disease, not just the symptoms. And to him, the disease is the ugly, Satan, who's always there. And he has an unusual gift, but strange things happen to the monk.
And to people around him.
And to people
He's
around.
He's a dangerous man to be around, for sure.
Sometimes, yeah, it's part of it, but it just.
I don't want to give it away, but you know, being able to incorporate the supernatural into the natural and what we're experiencing as human beings, and what you say that the monk has this great discernment and ability to pick up with this situation, this profile that most law enforcement could say, okay, this is how it's going to play out, can turn on a dime because of the ugly.
Oh, absolutely. Something very calm can go very volatile, and something very volatile, if the right person shows up, says the right thing, just immediately calms it down.
Right.
And this is a daily thing that not just police officers, but we as just citizens, everybody believes in something, and there's somebody out there going to go, I don't believe in anything. Well, if you don't believe in anything, that's a belief.
Yes.
But in all of your religions and just out of everyday life, there's something out there, you know, and like we were talking about, what makes the accountant just go off?
Nobody saw it coming, supposedly.
That's right. Probably the best description of the ugly is the wind. You can't draw the wind. You can't color it. But you can't deny its existence because you see what it does. And
the effects.
The effects of it, and the carnage that can happen.
And
with
in
it.
the Gumdrop House Affair, we see the effects of the wind in every chapter. You've done a masterful job of keeping us guessing what's going to happen, and just when you think you know what's going to happen, something else happens, and the effects of the wind are devastating in some chapters. But all we have to do is open up the newspapers or turn on the news, and we see it right there.
Every day. Every day, and there's a quote that some people attribute to Kevin Spacey, but it's a philosopher in the 1400s, that the greatest trick that the devil ever pulled was to convince the world he didn't exist, and then poof, he's gone. And it's always easier to say we don't believe in him because we're afraid. And we should be aware. We got to pay attention.
And you've seen things in your career in law enforcement that no human being, and the Tet Offensive, we're talking Vietnam, you know, that no human being should have to see. But being able to realize that sometimes there's a force that is affecting humanity that is beyond their control, at least can help you categorize it, or...
Oh, sure. And even the Bible, you know, St. Paul said, our battle's not with flesh and blood, but of powers and principalities, seen and unseen.
Correct.
So who lives there? Somebody, something.
And I believe that most people watching would say in the midnight hour when they're alone, you know, where do we get these things about the thing in the closet that children see, or
the bump in the night,
and things like that, the paranormal.
Oh, absolutely.
So there is an unseen world that's happening all around us.
And just because it hasn't happened to you doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Right. And in the case of the monk and his particular character, he is one of those that, like you, infuses faith into a situation and into a courageous conversation that most people don't want to talk about. And I love that about the monk, that he's able to be practical, compassionate, but also he has that side of him that you don't want to mess around with.
He's potentially a lethal person. And he's worked long and hard on controlling it through his career as a football player at Notre Dame to working undercover narcotics, robbery, homicide with Jack Lasky on Capitol Hill in Denver, 13th and Pearl. And
And so the Gumdrop House, you get the title for this book in the Monk series. What is the Gumdrop House? Do you think we can at least tell them that?
Yes. The Gumdrop House is a shelter for prostitutes. Male, female, straight, gay, doesn't make any difference. Excuse me. If you want to get off the streets and out of the business, you can go to the Gumdrop House.
Yes.
Because on the exterior, there are 7 huge, different colored gumdrops. And this is because of the woman who runs the Gumdrop House. Her name's Mona Monaghan, which in Gaelic means small monk.
Oh, and she is.
And she is. And the rule at the Gumdrop House is you come in. No Johns, no dope, no stealing.
And they get transformed and they get to experience love.
Right. And in every room, including the bathrooms, there's a crucifix.
Yes.
So you can leave once and come back, because a lot of people do, just like with a lot of addictions. When things are too good, it makes you feel uncomfortable because you're not used to it.
Right.
You can come back a second time, not a third.
And that's the Gumdrop House Affair. Just
where it all starts.
Where it all starts, the Monk series. Tim McKeever is joining us today. And just thank you so much for taking time from your busy schedule. Gifted storyteller, best-selling writer. People can get the Gumdrop House Affair on Amazon CreateSpace or go to your website.
Yep. And we have, like all people, I have a Twitter and a Facebook, and so punch in the name and you'll find me.
All right. Timony, Timony, McKeever.com. Timony McKeever, if you'd like to order the Gumdrop House Affair book. I've read it. It's suspenseful. It's exciting. It's everything that a good book should be. It's a great read. We'll be back with more Arizona Business Spotlight in just a moment.
Orkin has pest control down to a science.
When your business chooses Orkin's Precision Protection Program, you get a tailored pest control program for your specific industry and environment.
Your business can benefit from over a century of experience, training, and scientific knowledge that define the Orkin man.
Maximum protection, minimum exposure, backed by one of the industry's most comprehensive guarantees.
Choose your locally owned and operated Northern Arizona Orkin and get more than an exterminator. Get an expert.
Back on Arizona Business Spotlight, I'm Helen Gibson saying so long until next time. Thank you for joining me. Remember, you can and you will. You have that book inside you. It's time to write. You're without excuse. You heard how to do it today. Now get to it. Done is better than perfect. We'll see you next time on Arizona Business Spotlight. Have a great day.